Zach Barnett, Football Scoop. We've had Zach on many times about many things college football. Zach wrote a story yesterday evening after seeing the quotes with Craig, and also the interview with Baylor's Director of Athletics and Mack Rhoades. Zach, thanks for your time. When you saw the quotes, what was your first reaction?
I guess I had a lot of reactions. I think I applaud Mack Rhoades. Obviously, if you're an AD, it's kind of, I think it can be kind of tough to be, the quote unquote general manager or owner, the guy who stays above the fray, and the guy who rolls his sleeves up and tries to get involved and figure out what's wrong. And I think Mack did a good job of playing both of those roles in the interview on yesterday.
Zach, from the outside, though, when you look at what's going on with Baylor and Dave Aranda over the last year, what's the path forward for them?
I think, in what I've seen of Baylor, admittedly I have not watched every game, but I've seen enough to know that I just don't see a whole lot of players that scare you. Like I think my impression from Mack was that, as I wrote in the article, is that it seems like he's, and this is just my intuition, it seems like he's frustrated in the disconnect between how the offensive coaches draw up how the offense is supposed to work on a chalkboard in ideal conditions versus how they've adapted to the team they have to coach at this given moment. And I'm sure there's a lot of that, but at the same time, I just don't see a lot of personnel, especially offensively, that's going to strike fear in the hearts of opposing defensive coordinators.
Zach, do you think that it's, especially for schools like Baylor, a more vulnerable time than maybe it would be otherwise because of all the changes, that you almost have to be aware of not only just the regular situation, but the long-term ramifications, like a Baylor being well-positioned for this new Big 12, but as this is starting to turn the corner, they are not very well-positioned all of a sudden. Is there even more of an awareness of the present and where you are and where this is all going, you think, than maybe in years past?
Do you mean just in regards to the changes within the Big 12 or NIL and the transfer portal?
I think all of that. Is there more of a pressure now that you can't afford to have a couple of years go by where you're just middle of the road or falling flatter because of, NIL and all these various things, that they kind of have to be at their best and they can't afford a couple of years of not making bowl games, for example?
I think from what I've seen in the Baylor football within the last 10 years, is just incredible resiliency. The program has, the program has fallen apart and then risen back up 3 different times in that time. And so they've done an incredibly good job of choosing the right people, and then those people choosing the right players and the right assistant coaches. That happened from Briles to Rule, and then from Rule to Aranda. And so I think, I don't think Baylor's in a bad spot moving forward. I think there's a general sense within the donor class of every institution that, oh my gosh, what we're doing now is not sustainable. So I think the fear that Baylor has is kind of a universal fear, but I think Baylor's, its brand, its, the DNA with the program, its location, I don't think Baylor is in any sort of existential crisis right now.
Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com with us. With the way that the conference is about to be, obviously with Texas and Oklahoma moving on, do you see any evidence this year on who might be the alpha that steps up based on results so far halfway through the season?
I think right now the alpha I see in this conference is either Utah or Colorado. Utah obviously has a Hall of Fame coach in Kyle Whittingham. They have an incredibly successful formula of what they've done, having won the last 2 Pac-12 titles. And then Colorado has the ultimate X factor in its head coach right now, and its ability to attract talent that no other Big 12 school has. Obviously, Deion Sanders is probably not going to be at Colorado forever, and so that could change. But those are my 2 answers as of right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how the Big 12 weathers that storm in the short term of, when it comes to who's going to get the 5 stars. it's going to be him over most everyone else.
Oh yeah, he's going to be able to recruit from a different pool than I think a lot of than the rank and file of the Big 12, and that's, I think, in the long run, I think Deion's presence has been an incredibly good thing for college football. It's been a good thing for the Pac-12, and I think it'll be a good team, a good thing for the Big 12 for as long as it lasts, even if he might inflict some losses on the Baylors and the TCUs and the Texas Techs.
Do you think this current Big 12 landscape, the way it's gone so far this season, is the worst case scenario for the Big 12? Are they squeezing the most juice out of Oklahoma and Texas while they can? Kind of how do you see how this, all the blustering and all the talk of the offseason and they're leaving and all this, and man, Zach, Oklahoma and Texas pretty clearly seem to be the two best teams, and everybody else is just kind of jumbled in the middle or lower.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously we're in now the third season of waiting for Texas and Oklahoma to leave. And 2021 could not have gone any better with Texas collapsing, Oklahoma missing the Big 12 championship for the first time in a long time, and then losing Lincoln Riley. And then you had that incredible game between Baylor and Oklahoma State. Last year was incredible with TCU and Kansas State playing a classic game, and TCU obviously making it to the title game. And then it seems like all that momentum, all the run of hitting on 18 and getting blackjack, even though that's a bad reference, but you get what I'm saying. Seems like their luck has run out a little bit. And watching that Kansas State game, the quote unquote challenger to those two, they sure looked awful at losing at Oklahoma State. So yeah, it certainly seems like everyone is kind of hitting reset at the same time. Obviously, TCU struggling a lot as the quote-unquote defending champion, even though they were the best team last year, even though they didn't win the conference. So, yeah, it's kind of a bad time for everyone to be in transition mode as those two cycle upward and then out.
With West Virginia winning so far, with Neil Brown, who was on not just the hot seat, he had coals in his pants. Now that he has at least had this start, who would you say is next man up who might be on the hot seat within the Big 12?
I was actually just writing about this as you called for a piece that's going to go out tomorrow. It's a big 2 weeks for Dana Holgorsen. I think he was close to being let go last season, and he spent a lot of this season kind of sounding an alarm that, hey guys, we're not ready to compete as an institution in the Big 12. And then now here you have West Virginia coming to town tomorrow night, as his old team has not suffered his loss, as they are right now in the hunt to play for the Big 12 championship, while Houston's 0-2 in the conference. And then next week you get Texas in town, and that's going to be a sold out game, national TV, and it looks like Houston's going to be a 3-touchdown underdog. So obviously, if you win that game, then all is forgiven, at least for 6 days. But if you go out there and get blown out, which they certainly could, then it's going to be a painful 8-day stretch, possibly, or I guess 10-day stretch, possibly for old Holgo.
Yeah, of things that ADs have told us, and the part of this was kind of in jest. We had Chris Pesman on. This is about a month ago now, right, guys?
Yep.
And he even said, there might be a day where Dana gets tired of NIL and the transfer portal and retires. That came out of Chris Pesman's mouth, and he was joking, but I do think that Dana falls in that category, Zach, of the, Mike Gundy, Dabo Sweeney, people who are like, I like coaching ball, but all this other stuff that goes with it's not for me anymore.
Yeah, Mike Gundy is another interesting guy to bring up, given that he's such a made man and has more money than God up there in Stillwater. But he seems like the type of person that's only happy when he's unhappy, in the regards that the worse Oklahoma State plays, the more excited he is to show up to work at 6 a.m., roll his sleeves up, and figure out why.
Would you throw Lincoln Riley into that group that Paul just mentioned of guys that possibly just see grass greener on the other side of college sports the way that it currently is?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he just gave it an interview to the LA Times in a really well-written piece that they put out there, just kind of Lincoln contemplating about life and the meaning of coaching and all that stuff. It's a really good article that I think everybody should read. And he certainly did not seem like a guy that was long for college football. And Whether he tries his hand at the NFL or just takes his money and runs, who's to say? But he did not seem like a guy that's going to stick around just because this is what he is and who he is. He does not view himself as a guy that's going to coach until the wheels fall off.
Zach, back to what I asked you for the beginning, the article you wrote based on our interview with Mack Rhoades last night or yesterday afternoon. How often have you seen ADs make comments like he said or what he did last night?
Yeah, as I said earlier, obviously ADs, when you start at 2-4 or worse, I mean, ADs are asked to comment all the time. And so the fact that he's commenting is not news in and of itself, but I thought the way, he was willing to address that we need to get better offensively. He mentioned the red zone, Baylor's lack of success stopping the run, all the stuff that fans see and acknowledge and post about on message boards. The fact that he was willing to go there, I think spoke well of him, and I think it showed his commitment to Dave Aranda to get things done. And I mean, if I'm a Baylor offensive coach, and I know some of those guys because they're some of those guys' friends, I would not have slept well last night having heard that. And of course, Baylor's offensive struggles are not news to those guys, but he seemed to go drill down a little bit deeper into Baylor's issues, to whereas most ADs, are professional type guys who can kind of feel themselves getting, quoted and aggregated as they're speaking. He didn't seem to be speaking with that sort of fear. With the results we've seen on the field right now, who do you feel like are the four best teams? And there's a lot of games to be played, and they play each other. If you, though, had to pick four right now that would be in the college football playoff, who would they be? I'd certainly go Washington. I've been very close to ranking them as my number one overall team, and might do that depending on Saturday's results. I'd have to go Georgia. I was very close to dropping them, but they finally looked like the Georgia we expected on Saturday night. I mean, Michigan looks really good. I'm frustrated because they play 8 straight patsies, but you got to give them their due. And then after that, I have to go Oklahoma. I mean, they've been 1 or 2 or 3 in a lot of different computer polls throughout the season after they blew out Arkansas State, and they validated all of that and then some on Saturday. So you got to give them their due. Yeah, they validated what I think they thought they were, but it was hard to still kind of, wait a minute, we need him to do that against somebody else. Yeah, I don't think Texas took too much of a step back despite the loss, but Oklahoma, to me, said, hey, we're not going anywhere if you thought maybe we were. Yeah, I think they were pleasantly surprised with how they held up on both lines of scrimmage, and I think they were thrilled to death to see Dylan Gabriel go out and perform the way he did. Because, that was a question mark. He could certainly pummel you if you're a Tulsa or an Arkansas State, but he frankly never played on a stage like the Cotton Bowl stage, and then he went out there and he was the best player on the field. And so if now that you know he's got that ability, then you certainly are going to dream big if you're the Sooners. Zach, thank you very much. Appreciate your time from footballscoop.com. Zach Barnett with us on 365 Sports.